In GTA San Andreas, the mission Reuniting the Families starts falling apart the closer you look at it. Sweet, CJ, Ryder, and Big Smoke drive to the motel in order to reunite the families. The gang is divided into sets that have fought each other for some time now. If they want to compete with the Ballas and the Vagos that keep growing in power, the sets of the families have to finally make peace again. The Grove Street set is represented by Sweet. He goes to attend the meeting. The rest of the crew is supposed to wait in the car, but suddenly the situation goes out of control. The police arrive. CJ takes off to rescue his brother. Meanwhile, Smoke and Ryder flee the scene like cowards. So far, everything checks out, right? We know that Smoke and Ryder are traitors. That's why they drove away. That's why they led Sweet and CJ straight into an ambush. Everything begins to add up, and even CJ seems to notice something's off.
What took you? We're Smoke and Ryder.
They shook on us.
And then something strange happens. Big Smoke and Ryder return to the motel and help the brothers escape. But why? How come? What for? In the very next mission, the Green Saber, Big Smoke and Ryder betray CJ and Sweet. Why wouldn't they do it a mission earlier? What are they waiting for? Why do they return for Sweet and CJ? Why do they risk getting arrested? The Jefferson Motel is still crawling with cops by the time they arrive. At first, I couldn't make sense of it. And to be fair, no wonder I got lost. 'Cause actually, the entire mission is very suspicious, especially the chase sequence when we escape the cops. Big Smoke's acting as though he's joking around. His rescue mission has little to do with rescuing. First off, Smoke's driving in circles. Even CJ points it out to him. Yo, dude, are you trying to get us pinched or something?
We going around in circles. Smoke, stop going in circles. Hey, ain't we been here before?
Then it gets even wilder. Smoke keeps making ridiculous decisions. For example, he drives through a car wash.
Damn it, Smoke, I got soap in my eye. Smoke, you're insane. I like things.
Not only does he nearly wreck their ride, but it also makes it harder for Carl to shoot. As if that weren't enough, halfway through the chase, CJ's AK jams. The one Ryder has given him.
Oh shit, roadblock up ahead.
The K's jammed.
The very end of the chase is completely out of this world. Pure nonsense. Smoke drives into a random dead-end alleyway. He openly refuses to back up despite the fact that they're just about to drive into a very low-flying police helicopter. He claims that the brakes are out. As a result of that stunt, the crew loses the car and barely manages to escape with their lives. This whole rescue mission doesn't look like it's supposed to rescue anyone. It's difficult to understand for someone who doesn't know that Smoke and Ryder are traitors. CJ and Sweet don't suspect anything either. Let's now focus on the main question. Why did Smoke return for CJ and Sweet? After all, he was the one who led him into this trap. And the answer is that his plan didn't work out. Smoke's plan was to make sure Sweet entered the motel. Then, Smoke was supposed to tip off the cops. As the cops raided the spot, him, Ryder, and most importantly, CJ would get away. Of course, CJ wasn't informed about anything. Smoke thought he could manipulate him. Probably say something like, "Hey CJ, we can't help Sweet. The place is crawling with cops. We're gonna get booked. We gotta leave him." Notice how easily Smoke agreed to let Sweet represent the Grove crew.
I vote I'm our representative on this one.
That's right.
Hey, it's all good. If Sweet think he can handle it, I'm down with him, man.
All right.
Now it makes sense. It very much helped his plan to walk Sweet into a trap. But one part of that plan didn't go right, and that part was CJ. CJ got out of the car. He was stubborn. He said he was gonna save his brother. That was something Ryder and Smoke hadn't expected. They had hoped that CJ, under pressure, would follow their commands. Smoke wanted to go. Ryder wanted to go. They were saying, "CJ, what are you doing? Get in the car."
Man, what you doing?
Go, get back in, man. We out of here, baby.
I ain't leaving my brother. I ain't no buster.
Not for a second did Ryder and Smoke want to support him, but CJ went anyway. That made a huge difference. Suddenly, the ambush for Sweet was in danger. Sweet alone wouldn't have stood a chance. When CJ entered the motel, there were SWAT officers everywhere. Sweet could only powerlessly wait in one of the rooms and hope for a miracle. And CJ was that miracle. From Smoke's perspective, now the chances that Sweet would escape the ambush in one piece were high. Too high. The success of the plan was now hanging by a thread. Smoke had to come up with something new. Now, does that connect to why Smoke later came back? Yes, it does. Now, let's explain why. Smoke had to improvise. The whole setup actually seemed well thought out. The trap for Sweet in the motel, keeping CJ away from Sweet, and then the escape. You have to admit that it really held up, but it had one serious drawback. It didn't account for failure. And that's what eventually happened in the mission. If Sweet and CJ escaped the motel, fought off the cops, and Ryder and Smoke didn't return for them, they'd given away their hidden agenda. CJ and Sweet wouldn't have let that slide. They would have become suspicious. Let's put ourselves in Smoke's shoes. Sweet is in the motel. CJ's gone to save him. Smoke and Ryder have escaped. Smoke doesn't know if CJ is going to mess up his plan. CJ's become an unpredictable variable here. Cause now, if Sweet gets ambushed, he disappears from the streets and everything is cool. Smoke would be able to kick off his drug operation with Tenpenny. But CJ's gone to rescue him. What if CJ and Sweet manage to escape? Then, Smoke's in trouble. Sweet and CJ would notice something's off. They'd realize that the police arrived right after they'd got there. That Smoke and Ryder drove away just in time. That it must have been another ambush on Sweet. They'd ask themselves, why is Sweet always the target? Why aren't other high-ranking members ever attacked? Especially that Big Smoke's been asking for trouble. He's been living in the Baller territory for some time now. Sweet and CJ would try to get the gang together after the motel stunt. Maybe the families would finally unite. Maybe they'd find a way to get money and weapons. Sweet and CJ are a good team. The plan of Smoke and Tenpenny might fall apart at any second. And that's why Smoke and Ryder had no choice. They had to go back for the homies, because not everything was lost. They could simply go back for them and say they quickly drove over to Emmett's to grab some heat to help them. And that's it. The situation was saved. They wouldn't have come across as traitors, only as loyal friends who keep their heads on their shoulders. That way, they could maintain Sweet and CJ's trust and buy some time to work on another ambush. However, the mission, the Green Saber, wasn't Plan B. It was Plan C. Smoke's second ambush was carried out that same night in that same mission. We said before that Smoke's behavior during the chase was suspicious. Well, after taking a closer look, Smoke had one specific objective in that mission. He gave it away himself.
Hey, I'm taking what options I have, all right? Maybe if you have a nice word with these officers, they'll let us on our way.
Smoke suggested that they stop and talk to the police. On its own, it sounds like a casual joke, right? But it wasn't just that. Check this out. Smoke was driving around in circles. Then he drove through that car wash. And then he pulled off that mess with the alleyway and got rid of the car. Smoke wasn't just acting weird. He didn't make stupid mistakes because he was a dumbass. This entire chase was one big sabotage. One big attempt to get arrested by the cops. And that aligns perfectly with the story.
It makes sense, don't it?
Because let's remember one thing. The plan to kill Sweet had been put aside a long time ago. At this point, Tenpenny and Smoke wanted Sweet arrested, not put in the ground. That was because CJ turned out to be very skilled at taking care of Tenpenny's dirty work. That changes a lot in our analysis. Let's remember, Tenpenny needed CJ for difficult jobs. CJ wasn't exactly excited about this career opportunity. The officer had to blackmail him. For that, he needed leverage. Meanwhile, Big Smoke didn't want to have to kill Sweet. He felt bad about it. He had moral issues. He'd even been trying to convince Sweet to take up dealing crack. Tenpenny had to blackmail Smoke into killing Sweet, which we see in the introduction movie. That's why the two gentlemen went for a compromise. They weren't going to kill Sweet, only get him arrested. That way, Smoke didn't have to kill his sandbox homie, and Tenpenny gained leverage to blackmail CJ. If CJ stopped working for him, Sweet would have had a hard time in jail.
Now you stay the fuck away from Smoke and stay the fuck away from us. Otherwise, Sweet's gonna find himself on a baller's block getting in touch with his feminine side.
And now, everything becomes crystal clear. The motel ambush was supposed to land Sweet in jail. Big Smoke and Tenpenny would have then kicked off their drug operation. CJ would have had to work for Crash if he wanted his brother to sleep well in the can. But when CJ went into the motel, he made Big Smoke's plan collapse. Smoke had to come back, partly to avoid raising suspicion, but mainly in order to finish the job. He returned to pick up Sweet and then try to get them arrested in a believable way. After all, Smoke had a deal with Officer Tenpenny. That guaranteed that even if the whole crew got caught, only Sweet would have actually landed in the pen. Tenpenny would have let CJ go too. Even if CJ ended up at the police station, he would have eventually gotten freed. As we know, Smoke's sabotage in the second part of the mission didn't work out either. But thanks to his caution, neither Sweet nor CJ suspected anything. That allowed Big Smoke to organize another ambush. The mission, the Green Saber, was practically a copy of the mission Reuniting the Families. But this time, everything went smoothly. Sweet got banged up and CJ was exiled out of town, where he had to do jobs for Tenpenny. It's time to put all this together to make sure that we've understood everything correctly. The plan in Reuniting the Families was specifically to get Sweet arrested. Sweet was needed alive. Tenpenny didn't want his death because he wanted to blackmail CJ. The problems appeared when CJ entered the motel to rescue his brother. The result of the ambush became uncertain. On top of that, CJ's life was now endangered. Smoke improvised and returned to the motel. Thanks to that, he could help CJ if necessary. It also allowed Smoke to try to sabotage the crew so they'd get caught. To be more specific, to make Sweet end up in jail. But if the plan failed, nothing bad would have happened. Sweet and CJ wouldn't have lost trust in either Ryder or Big Smoke. As a result, Smoke could arrange another ambush. The ambush under the Mulholland intersection in the Green Saber. On top of that, Caesar accidentally helped Smoke's cause because he requested to meet up with CJ, dragging him away from his brother. But the question is, was it really all a coincidence? Is it possible that Caesar dragged CJ away on Smoke's or Tenpenny's orders? You'll find the answer to that question in the video you see on the screen right now. Highly recommend it. Meanwhile, thanks for watching and a big shout out to the supporters. Take care and see you soon.